The study focuses on the perception of COVID-19 risk in long-distance travel, particularly focusing on how safety measures influence mode choice among car, train, and aircraft. It employs a hierarchical information integration (HII) approach to capture subjective perceptions and models the obtained data using a latent class choice model, resulting in 4 distinct segments. 2 segments have a relatively high value of time, tend to be more mode-agnostic, and prefer determining the level of risk by themselves, relying primarily on infection and vaccination rates. The remaining 2 segments have a lower value of time and strong mode affinity, for the train and car respectively. The HII approach is used to capture a broader array of attributes and group them based on a common denominator. Respondents evaluate these groups of attributes individually, giving them a subjective ranking on a Likert scale. The bridging experiment then presents these rankings to respondents, enabling the analyst to capture how they're traded off. However, applying LCCMs to HII data is challenging, as the perception of the subjective ratings in the bridging experiment will result in different parameters for each class. The COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally altered travel behavior, with public transport seeing the biggest drop in usage. The study investigates people's perception of 8 COVID-19 related safety measures related to long-distance trips and how subjective perception of safety impacts their mode choice. It uses the HII variant approach, including a single construct for safety with other attributes being included in the bridging experiment. The bridging experiment is modeled by means of a panel mixed logit (ML) model, which captures respondent heterogeneity and accounts for the panel effect of the SP data. An alternative approach to capturing respondent heterogeneity is the Latent Class Choice Model (LCCM), which estimates separate multinomial logit (MNL) models for each class, making them easily distinguishable and their interpretation more clear-cut. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on long-distance travel and individual behavior is multifaceted. Fear of infection and crowding remain key factors influencing mode choice, with many opting for private cars over trains and air travel. To combat the spread, various measures have been introduced, including enhanced cleaning, mask mandates, and travel regulations. Research suggests that the perception of public safety is crucial for decision-making, yet there is limited understanding of this perception in the context of long-distance travel. This study evaluates the perception of COVID-19 measures through a survey and models the impact on mode choice using an HII experiment. The survey includes a rating experiment to capture respondents' perception of infection risk and a bridging experiment to contextualize this risk in a mode choice setting. The results of the WLS regression and LCCM estimation are presented, providing insights into how different population segments perceive infection risk and its impact on mode choice. The study's findings and implications are discussed, highlighting the importance of understanding subjective perceptions in shaping travel behavior. The research focuses on understanding travelers' perceived infection risk in relation to various travel attributes, including trip-specific factors, policy-based attributes for travel and international travel, and pandemic context. For trip-specific factors, attributes like onboard crowding, air circulation, and cleaning policy are examined. Policy-based attributes include face mask policy, air circulation, and cleaning policy, as well as government travel advice and entry requirements. The pandemic context involves infection rate and vaccination rate. A bridging experiment is designed to link perceived infection risk with other travel-related attributes, including mode choice between car, train, or aircraft, travel time, cost, and travel class. The experiment includes 2 distance categories, approximately 500 kilometers and 1,000 kilometers, to capture a broader scope of potential long-distance trips. The research paper focuses on the estimation of a hybrid choice model for long-distance travel behavior, utilizing both rating and bridging experiments. The study aims to understand how individuals perceive travel time, cost, comfort, and risk of infection with COVID-19 in different travel modes such as trains, aircraft, and cars. A Bayesian deficient design is generated for the bridging experiment, which maximizes the number of choice tasks within the trade-off area and avoids dominant alternatives. The design includes questions about respondents' long-distance travel characteristics, preferred travel modes, and perception of the Omicron variant of COVID-19. In terms of model estimation, the separate rating and bridging experiments are modeled separately. The bridging experiment is modeled using a discrete choice model, DCM, specifically a latent class choice model, LCCM, to capture respondent heterogeneity. The LCCM estimates several distinct MNL models, allocating individuals to these models in a probabilistic fashion based on their observed choices. This approach provides insight into the composition of each class and can be extended with socio-demographic information. The class allocation probability is then carried on into the WLS regression to model the rating experiment. The paper also discusses the formulation of the LC model and the class allocation probability, providing equations for both. The choice probability of respondent N selecting alternative I, given a set of parameters, is calculated using the LCCM. The probability of respondent N belonging to class S is determined by the utility of respondent N belonging to class S, which is calculated using the class allocation utility function. The research paper discusses a rating experiment using a multiple linear regression approach to analyze the impact of individual aspects on the scoring of attributes. It proposes estimating separate regression models for each population segment using weighted least squares, WLS, regression. This approach allows for the use of class allocation probabilities as weights, which are calculated from the longitudinal cohort and career model, LCCM. The data collection involved a survey administered to the Dutch Railways panel, resulting in 705 fully valid responses. The sample's socio-demographic characteristics are compared to those of the Dutch population, showing a skewed distribution with an above-average share of older individuals and higher education levels. The survey was conducted during the COVID-19 epidemic, with various government measures in place. The context is important, as it affects how respondents answered the survey. The paper examines the impact of these characteristics on the model results in the conclusion and discussion section. The research paper discusses the results of a bridging experiment and rating experiments, focusing on the estimation of a 4-class latent class model with an adjusted rho squared of 0.34. The study utilizes weighted least squares regression models to analyze travel preferences and infection risk perception across different market segments. A sensitivity analysis is conducted to understand the implications of these preferences on modal split. The paper identifies 4 distinct segments based on their travel preferences, infection risk perception, and socio-demographic characteristics. Time-sensitive travelers, prudent travelers, frequent train-loving travelers, and cautious car travelers. Time-sensitive travelers are the most sensitive to travel time, with a willingness to pay of €72 per h compared to a sample average of €40 per h. They perceive risk as time-dependent and do not associate any fixed penalty for risk. Their modal preferences are constant, with a strong preference for train and aversion towards the private car. Comfort is insignificant for this segment, and they are influenced by infection and vaccination rates, as well as mask requirements. Official advice does not significantly impact their perceived risk, suggesting they prefer making their own informed decisions. This segment is representative of the sample in terms of income, education, and gender. They have a low car ownership rate and are the least frequent long-distance travelers, primarily traveling for work. Their stated modal preferences favor train or air for shorter trips and only air for longer trips, as observed in the ternary chart in Figure 4. The paper concludes by discussing the implications of these preferences on modal split through a sensitivity analysis. The summary begins by highlighting the model fit and parameter estimates of the mode choice model, specifically focusing on the segments identified in the research. It details the characteristics of each segment, including their preferences, risk perceptions, and willingness to pay for different travel attributes. The prudent travelers segment is noted for their sensitivity to time and risk, preferring flying over train travel at high-risk levels. They also exhibit a willingness to pay for class upgrades and consider entry requirements more than other segments. The frequent train-loving travelers segment, on the other hand, has a strong preference for train travel and is less concerned with risk, relying more on government travel advice. They are willing to pay for comfort upgrades and exhibit mixed behavior regarding entry requirements and crowding. The summary concludes by highlighting the demographics and travel behaviors of these segments, including their modal preferences and willingness to pay for different travel attributes. The fourth segment, cautious car travelers, exhibits the lowest willingness to pay for travel time improvements at €15 per age. They experience risk both as a fixed penalty and time-dependent, with their sensitivity to travel time in high-risk situations being almost 3 times higher than in low-risk situations. This group is the most sensitive to increasing risk on a train, which explains their strong preference for car travel due to perceived safety. They have an average perception of different attributes influencing risk, but unlike other segments, they do not perceive a yellow travel warning as lowering risk. Instead, they perceive a red warning as the most risky. This segment has the highest car ownership, with 68% owning their own car and only 15% not having one. Their high car ownership likely influences their modal preferences, as they strongly prefer using their car for making any kind of long-distance trips. When they travel, it is usually not alone, but with their partner or family. In terms of implications, the sensitivity analysis explores how the modal split is affected for different trip lengths and different levels of perceived risk. The results are presented in Figure 5, showing changes at the level of the individual segments. This analysis helps understand how the obtained parameter estimates impact mode choice. The sample is not representative of the Dutch traveling population, so the sizes of the individual segments are not assumed to be representative, and thus, a joint population modal split is not presented. The analysis focuses on the impact of perceived risk on travel mode choice for long-distance trips. It investigates how varying levels of risk affect the preference for train, car, and air travel. The study uses a hierarchical information integration approach and a latent class choice model to analyze the data. It identifies 4 distinct segments based on travel behavior preferences: time-sensitive travelers, prudent travelers, frequent train-loving travelers, and cautious car travelers. Each segment has unique values of time and risk perceptions. For instance, time-sensitive travelers perceive risk as time-dependent, while prudent travelers see it as time-independent. The study suggests that making passengers feel safer on the train could increase its usage. It also highlights the importance of understanding these risk perceptions to effectively promote sustainable travel modes. The research focuses on understanding the risk perception and safety measures among different traveler segments for long-distance trips during the COVID-19 pandemic. It highlights how certain policy measures, such as mask-wearing and entry requirements, can reduce perceived risk but notes that their impact is lower compared to external factors. The study also explores how cleaning and air circulation policies are perceived, with inconclusive results for air circulation and a preference for daily disinfection among all segments. It emphasizes the importance of considering the unique aspects of long-distance trips, such as exposure time, when evaluating safety measures. The weighted least squares regression proved effective in distinguishing risk perception among segments, particularly for factors like infection, vaccination, and travel advice. The research concludes by suggesting the need for a balanced combination of measures and emphasizes the importance of future studies to expand on these findings. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly impacted travel behavior and preferences, leading to increased interest in sustainable modes of transportation such as night trains. This paper explores the potential for night trains to become a viable alternative for long-distance travel in Europe, particularly considering factors like risk perception, travel time, and cost. It also discusses how the pandemic has accelerated changes in travel behavior and preferences, with a focus on the revival of night trains as an environmentally friendly option. Research highlights the importance of understanding risk perception and its impact on travel behavior. Studies have shown that fear of infection plays a significant role in determining travel choices, with higher perceived risk leading to reduced travel. Furthermore, there is evidence that working from home during the pandemic has influenced attitudes towards train use positively. The study also delves into the concept of willingness to pay for safety improvements in passenger air travel, which could be applied to night trains as well. Hierarchical information integration experiments and integrated choice experiments are used to understand traveler preferences and choices, highlighting the trade-offs between travel time, cost, and safety. The revival of night trains is not only driven by environmental concerns but also by recent policy changes. For instance, France has outlawed short-haul flights where a train journey can be completed within 2.5 hours. Similarly, Austria's trains are taking over short-haul flight routes, further emphasizing the shift towards more sustainable travel options. In conclusion, the paper presents a comprehensive analysis of the impact of COVID-19 on travel behavior and preferences, highlighting the potential for night trains to emerge as a preferred mode of long-distance travel in Europe. By examining factors such as risk perception, travel time, and cost, the study contributes to our understanding of the complex interplay between pandemic-related factors and travel choices. The summary begins with an overview of the current situation regarding COVID-19 and its impact on transportation systems, particularly in the Netherlands. It highlights the government's plan to reopen everything in 3 steps and the Corona dashboard for real-time data. The discussion then shifts to the potential demand for new high-speed rail services and the valuation of travel time savings. This is followed by insights into how COVID-19 is reshaping activity travel behavior and the impact of risk perceptions on route choice behavior. The summary also touches on the impact of COVID-19 on passenger transport measures and their effects. It concludes with a discussion on the need for new approaches, such as tradable mobility credits, to address long-distance travel and the importance of considering factors like hygiene in public transportation. The research paper presents a comprehensive analysis of travel mode preferences in the context of a post-COVID-19 world. It employs a survey design using engine software to construct experiments that assess how various factors such as crowding, face mask policies, air circulation, cleaning policies, travel advice, entry requirements, infection rates, and vaccination rates influence travel choices. The rating experiment design, Table 7, involves different combinations of these factors across various travel modes. Similarly, the bridging experiment designs for shorter, Table 8, and longer trips, Table 9, also consider travel time, cost, comfort, and risk associated with each mode. These experiments aim to understand how changes in these attributes impact travel mode preferences. In terms of travel time and cost calculations, the paper uses linear functions with intercepts based on average speeds of 100 km per hour for cars, 160 km per hour for trains, and 800 km per hour for aircraft. The intercepts capture waiting times at airports and train stations, which are assumed to be 0 for cars. An additional analysis in Appendix C varies train speeds between 70 km per hour and 300 km per hour to assess the impact of high-speed rail infrastructure on modal shift. The paper also discusses the calculation of trip travel time and travel costs for different modes, as shown in Figure 6. Interestingly, airfares for European flights are found to be fully distance independent, with an average price of €135. Train and car travel costs have an identical slope of 12 cents per kilometer, with intercepts of €8 and €5 respectively. The implications of varying train speeds are presented in Figure 7. Faster train speeds can lead to a 50% difference in travel time over a 1,000 km distance, leading to shifts in travel mode preferences. Time-sensitive travelers tend to switch from air to train, while frequent train-loving and cautious car travelers shift from car and prudent travelers substitute both. The modal preference pattern remains consistent, with time-sensitive and prudent travelers preferring land-based modes for shorter trips and flying for longer distances, whereas frequent train-loving and cautious car travelers stick to their preferred land-based mode even for distances over 1,000 kilometers. The research paper discusses the impact of train travel speed on market share across different market segments. Page 27 presents Figure 7, which illustrates the market share distribution based on average train travel speeds. This figure highlights the significant influence of speed on market share, with faster trains dominating certain segments. The paper then delves into the methodologies used to analyze this relationship, including the application of algorithms and mathematical models to understand the market dynamics. It emphasizes the importance of considering travel speed as a key factor in market share distribution.